Welcome to Stephen FM AI, Trump Daily Dump. You know, you see a naval standoff in the Persian Gulf, a leadership crisis down in South America, and then a political firestorm right here in the heart of America. Now, what if I told you that, according to our source material, these aren't just separate random events? Nope, they're all connected by a single pretty disruptive strategy that's been dubbed the Trump Armada. Today, we're going to unpack exactly what that means, and more importantly, why it matters to you. And really, this all boils down to one massive question, doesn't it? Is this Armada strategy a brilliant move that's bending the world to a whole new reality? Or is it a super reckless gamble that's pushing the entire system to its breaking point? Let's dive in and see what the evidence says. So, what is the Trump Armada? Well, think of it as a two-pronged attack. On one hand, yes, it's a literal military force, with warships and all that. But it's also a political method. The idea of using just overwhelming pressure to completely shatter old norms and force new outcomes, whether that's on the world stage or, kind of shockingly, right here at home. Okay, let's start with the most literal example of this strategy. We're talking about the massive fleet of warships that are, right now, parked off the coast of Iran. As you can imagine, this has created an incredibly tense standoff. And this is not your grandfather's quiet back-channel diplomacy. No way. The strategy here is a very public, very loud ultimatum, delivered for the whole world to see on social media. The message to Iran could not be clearer. Make a deal or else. The stakes are just being broadcast out there for everyone. Right, and this isn't just tough talk. This threat is backed by some immense firepower. Our source material points to a fleet led by the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is armed with at least 500 launch cells ready to fire Tomahawk missiles. This is the real, tangible military muscle behind that whole maximum pressure campaign. So what you get is this really dangerous deadlock. The US is demanding a new nuclear deal and threatening force. Iran, in response, says its military has its fingers on the trigger. But here's a critical complication. Key US allies in the region have apparently said no, refusing to allow their airspace to be used for an attack. That adds a huge layer of geopolitical uncertainty to the whole thing. And, the Armada's presence is already having these immediate, real-world consequences. Just the threat of a conflict has sent the Iranian currency into a complete freefall, collapsing to a record low. This economic shockwave, it's not a side effect. It's a core part of the maximum pressure strategy itself. But here's the thing. The standoff with Iran isn't just a one-off event. Our source material argues it's actually part of a repeatable global strategy. The whole logic of using overwhelming force is being turned into a kind of new playbook, one that's ready to be used in all sorts of different scenarios. The source actually calls this playbook the Maduro model, and it's based on the operation that removed Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. It's laid out as this starkly simple three-step formula. First, you have a military buildup. Second, you oust the leader. And third, you arrest them. Simple as that. And this is where you can see the model's really startling flexibility. In Venezuela, the goal was to remove what was seen as a national security threat, and that mission is marked down as a success. But now, those same pressure tactics are reportedly being used on Greenland with a totally different goal to acquire strategic territory from Denmark, which is a NATO ally. The outcome of that one, well, it's still very much in progress.
Okay, so this brings us to a really critical pivot point. We've seen how this aggressive, disruptive strategy works on foreign adversaries, but what happens when that same strategy gets turned inward and applied to American citizens on U.S. soil?
I mean, this quote really captures that domestic escalation perfectly. After a civilian was shot by federal agents in Minneapolis, this was the stark warning sent to the city's mayor for resisting federal raids. Suddenly, the confrontational Armada logic wasn't aimed at a foreign power anymore, but at an American city. And the backlash? Well, it's been severe. The shooting of a nurse named Alex Preedy, who videos showed was just holding a phone, ignited what the source calls a ferocious public reaction. But look closer. The criticism is coming from all over the place, including from the NRA, and it's even causing fights inside the GOP. That suggests this strategy is causing some major fractures right here at home. So let's zoom out and take the widest possible view here. The source material argues that this Armada strategy isn't just about winning one-on-one fights. It's about causing these systemic shocks to the established pillars of global and domestic order. And the scope of that disruption is pretty wide. You have a legacy media institution like the BBC, its leader resigns under pressure. You have global markets getting super volatile, with the euro surging against the dollar. Even long-standing diplomatic traditions are being challenged, with the gifted photo of Vladimir Putin getting displayed prominently in the White House. Each one of these events is a shock to a different part of the established system. So, all of this brings us right back to where we started. We've seen the evidence of the Armada strategy in action, we've seen its successes, its different applications, and the pretty significant backlash it's been getting. So now, let's weigh all that evidence. So, we're back to that core question. Is this strategy a sign of ultimate control, successfully breaking old systems? Or is it a sign of overextension, creating so many fractures that it could lead to its own collapse? Our source material really leaves us with a starkly divided scorecard. On the one side, you have some clear victories. A foreign leader gets ousted, the head of a major news organization resigns. But on the other side, the costs are really high. A fierce domestic backlash, fractures within the president's own party, and resistance from key allies. The evidence points in both directions, which leaves us with one final, crucial question. Are we watching the peak of a disruptive power or the very beginning of its unraveling? And that's the latest from Stephen FMAI Trump Daily Dump.